3 months later, on a San Francisco cable car, bell clanging as the operator rides the brake lever, inching down the steep incline, I find myself out early morning on my way to work, on tourists yet to awake. Imagining the near empty car breaking loose, I can almost feel the rush of it careening crazily down the hill, its bell ringing freely from the shifting momentum announcing its impending destruction. Pouring down the hill, steel wheels screeching, slipping off their track. The antiquated car flips on its side, sliding into the 20th century Detroit iron parked in its wake, rushing to its release and mine. These months since Mary Ann's death have been a slow recovery from the shock. Seems now there is no greater cure for it than the everyday life going on as before. Return to the city possessed by that specter of memory frozen south of the border in a driving rain. Only dread seems to be my constant companion. For that, I start my mornings with a half pint of Irish whiskey. Now occupying myself, drawing portraits at Fisherman's Wharf, I have only to walk a block from the cable car turnaround to an old brick fish cannery that's been rehabilitated as a boutique for shops. It's an unreal tourista destination to an area that once harbored the nitty gritty of commercial fishermen, ferry boatmen, and denim blue wobblies. Now it's crawling with the spectacle of modern plastic humanity, with all the creamy white sneaker pretense of vacationing vacancy of real purpose. For a brief time, the world waits on any of us with bucks enough to afford an offering in mute anticipation of our every need, whatever it may be, even some we never dreamed of. Tourists. Setting up my easel, I'm here to extend the dream with a souvenir of the day in the life of leisure. Drawing complete strangers into my confidence, I collect a decent living. Strangers opening up the book of their lives become for a few moments intimate friends, willingly paying me to listen to their slice of life's story, often inviting me to join them for drink or dinner or to drive their rental car, showing them sights so familiar to a local, sometimes sharing drugs and women. Ah, the women. Fathers present nubial daughters for an hour to be devoured in eyes, wide drinking in every curve of lips, glossed eyes, shining hair tossing in the wind. On any given day, this world provides a broad gamut of characters, woeful or wonderful, youthfully smooth or aged, wrinkled, sexually charged or sadly sunken. My crayons, loving them all, lift my spirit at least a while, till once again finding myself mourning that memory of smiling Mary Ann in those black lace panties. Page 126. Of course, looking back now, I see then just how much it pained me not to realizing the healing that had taken place. For I had taken the place of her ex, Ray, that schism between her and he, reunited as her soul passed into mine that day in that faraway ancient land, as heavens unleashed the torrent of her tears, Ma's a crying shame to wash away all traces of our separate existence. But then only time would tell me the story I'm telling you now, dear reader, as our soul remains, even now in time, now, though thought divided into visible invisibility, invisible it, why still motionless more, a mere supernatural mirrored memory superimposed of me or you to begin with Ablack again, Ablack again, Ablack Again, again and again, that stare-eye story of a singular it why now merely appearing itself finds its opening of another can of worms, twisting into appearing a pairing, a bliss with sorrow, love with hate, birth with death. Hopping off the cable car at its level turnaround at Aquatic Park in the bay water's edge, I carried my easel on a back strap with 3 custom-made folding chairs in a roll under one arm, along with a framed self-portrait. The street portrait is a respectable art that is often practiced by disreputable con artists, though some of them were my friends. At least they had the nerve to live by their wits, if not by their art. It's early, so I head to the Blue Anchor Cafe for breakfast. Over eggs and hash browns, I watch that daily life, sitting, standing, walking and talking, completely or nearly completely oblivious to the oblivion waiting in us, everybody at hand or on foot. Busy, busy business as being busy. Pay now no attention to that leering smile on the left right now of death, just there behind every smile, laughing within every laughter, ever it eye after itself. Life is but death in a masquerade, a show of it showing itself off, so anxious to get it on with its busyness, out in, out in, out in, such a large hurrah, hurrah, hurrah. A familiar waitress, Susie Cream Cheese as I call her, pours a double whiskey for me taking a seat at the counter. The fog hasn't lifted yet, the chill making it hard to get clients this early. Who wants to sit and freeze their ass off while paying me to do it? Voices echo through the tiny cafe, a throaty cough, a belly laugh, a hearty greeting. This is a place where local fishermen, plying the ocean waters for a living or dying, gather to meet comrades over a cup of joe. Dishes clatter, catching me, caught like a fish hooked in that memory of it. Recalling that day now, then came Jody, or Jo as I took to calling her after a torrid week of lovemaking. Feeling her eyes, those deep blues a man could so easily find himself lost in seeing, her blonde hair pushed behind ears, hearing her breath breathe through my lungs. She appeared shortly after I returned from accompanying Mary Ann's broken body shipped back to Chicago to an address Abuela found in her purse salvaged from the Mustang. That Mustang, its canvas top torn open from when I had desperately tried to pull her out. Her arms around my neck as the last breath left her crushed chest, and still it took me over an agonizing hour to free the lifeless body from that half-submerged wreck. Caught up in it, captured, oh Lord, 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 Lord of the word death. After a couple of days to help with the arrangements, I took it, her now not, as if an old coat, shed on a train to the border, then another, for a slow journey of sorrow, steadily pulsing with the wheels clattering on their tracks. Such a bittersweet journey. Returning to my homeland for the first time in over 3 years to deliver the remains of someone's daughter, sister, friend, lover. Still in shock, I'm floating in a vision, calling for a drink, yet realizing I'm lucky. Wanting to stay sober to deal with her family waiting, I hold off on the bottle, sure it will drink me back up soon enough. Without ever any intention of making contact with the academy, I paid my respects to her family in Chicago, hesitantly accepting plane fare back to San Francisco. On my return, finding myself broke as well as broke down, tore up, walking the streets with only the raggedy clothes on my back, same broken sandalias on my feet, I chanced to meet Wyly'em of all people. It's almost like he's been waiting for me, thankful for my desperate straits, so to be able to offer me a place as somebody to commiserate with about his split with Evie. Together we pull each other up, him suggesting my joining the sketch artists working the wharf. Turns out that sly scammer was good for something after all. Fortune then smiled my way, reviving my drawing, which gave me enough bread to get an apartment, meet some people, find some love in all the right, or as it turned out, wrong places. Things looking up, then down again that road of perdition that fateful day, Jo plopped her sweet butt on my lap, sitting unsuspecting by my easel, waiting to hook the next fish on Cannery Row. Gunning the double shot, I checked the time. It seems time for one more. Got to brace myself for that damn chill shuddering my bones. "Hey, Suze, when you get a chance," I called down the counter, lifting the empty glass. Smiling, she ambles down with a bottle of Mac. "Looks a little chilly out there for you, T," she offers with a pout as she pours. "Yeah, I was thinking of catching Jean Shao before he opens. He's my good luck face," I reply. "He that good-looking chink, Frenchie?" she asks, wiping the counter. Page 128. Chinese father, French mother, yeah. Actually, I first met him in Los Angeles when he just got off the boat. He had this crushed velvet European cut to his clothes. Within a week, he looked pure Southern California, sort of a cross between a surfer and a rock star, I offered, gulping the shot. Slapping the counter, I got to my feet, impulsively wanting to stuff a sawbuck down Susie's ample cleavage. I held myself back. Leaving it on the counter instead, I grabbed my gear to head out for another day in the street life. The salt air heavy with creosote wafting off dock pilings, launching seagull cries weighing my mind. She came sweeping into it, a feeling of dread. Jo seemed to wrap her weight into a feeling weighing on my bones. Shrugging off her ghostly vapor mingling with the whiskey, I shifted thoughts to the man. Spelled M-A-N, Jean-Claude Chow. He ran a clothing boutique at the cannery along with serving as my shill on occasion, with his portrait always in progress on my drawing board. With his long black hair, Fu Manchu mustache, and a lanky frame, he stood out in the crowd. He spoke 7 languages and had studied at the Sorbonne in Paris, now with major connections in Chinatown. A babe magnet. Just being around the cat lifted my spirits. He always opened his shop at 10 a.m., giving me just enough time to set up my gear. It was Jean-Claude who recommended this spot. It had the advantage of major tourist traffic flow, along with the disadvantage of wind. Oh, that wind. Wind coming all the way from China, over 10,000 miles of Pacific Ocean, to rip through the Golden Gate, only blocks away undeterred until it hit that corner. After first picking up the pieces of me after meeting up with Wyly'em, when returning from Chicago, I ran into Jean-Claude. Taking one look at me, he just shook his head. He saw right into my devastation, then took on my rehabilitation, helping me out to put together the gear needed to start drawing again. More than that, he gave me the confidence to put myself out there in the crowd to make a show of it. Rediscovering myself, drawing engaged a being free of the self-importance identifying purely with the artifice of my ego. Unfortunately, at that stage of my life, I lacked the maturity to carry that over when now not directly drawing right straight away on it. That desire of it to be somebody else, a stranger in a strange land of habit, indulgence, ignorance, ignoring that I am as being captivated in any given moment, free of all sorrow accruing in a memory self of it conceived of desire, lay at the root of all evils. Evil, I must confess, seemed to come down to that wishing for not realizing it, a singular it, why now to be a while deceived as being otherwise, as any thoughts of it felt, feeling that waves of it out in her eye of evil, a will of that wish for Ma's possibilities. Oh, how potent or impotent that inward wish to be important. Any potential of now appearing important enough to be a while a deceitful of it, a duplicity of its own desire to be me or you, a while now out in a memory. Now that desire brought Joe into my life. From the moment she slid onto my lap, arousal predominated, breaking down pretense of any defense. As breaking down my street setup of easel chairs, sample were quickly hailing a cab, taking the two of us back to my pad. Once in the door, I laid her out on the kitchen table, stripping off jeans, panties, t-shirts for a labial meal between her legs. So it went on and on over the next 7 days, stopping only for food, sleep, showers, between erotic drawings that I later sold to John Claude. Joe, the antidote or antithesis to Marianne, burned with that insatiable appetite for pleasure, raw, wild, unrelenting. Where I found Marianne contained mindful giving, Joe be unleashed, wanton, taking all, mindless of the cost. That cost to be paid in a life, both hers as mine. Sometimes I catch glimpses of a past life in my dreams. This image in our eye, reality glimpse, stands out in a super vivid way, superimposed as real as any waking memory in this life, staying with you the rest of this life. In vivid lucid dream, recalling as being tortured in a war, there because of bloodlust. Subtle traces of it, along with a long-term memory of all past lives, carries over into this life, spills over from a long-term memory, embodied subtly, our eye imagined, out in a plasmatic seas as to be molded by inward thoughts of a public dream field of you or I. Carries over from that subtle counterpart dream body through the 8th chakra, inches above the head. Art being called my salvation, my sublimation of it out in any situation. Then drinking now, not realizing whether I drink to forget the past or remember it. Sometimes feeling I crave it as the horror, the lawlessness, the fluid morality on the edge of sanity. Seeing the lot of refugees of this conflict with my generation's war in Vietnam breaks my heart open like an egg. They, with that haunted look, trying to drink or drug their way back to a normal life, still trying a lifetime later to forget, remembering to forget it. I wish all vets good luck. They're gonna need it. Some won't make it. Others will manage to put it behind them. A beast of it, ready to consume a consumption of it, consuming it, consumed by it all the while. Still it. Page 130. You may look for it, but now not find it for yourself as being your it already. Gone, staying gone out, are I absorbed in it as it. Now, realizing it, you are I out in from of the I. Witness, witnessing the storm, storming, strange beast full of it, aware of it, awareness, it, the destroyer, as its own creation, sustained only a while by its own wish to be willing to now know about it, to ignore itself, at least for a while now, by itself, only knowing, knowing it. Got your head in them jaws again, T? Jean-Claude asked, coming up behind me as I was setting up my easel. Is there really any time it ain't? I asked in return, unfolding the chairs to offer him a seat. Jean-Claude slides on in with a languid motion, stretching out his 6'2" frame. Wearing a pair of fashionably faded Levi's with cowboy boots, he draws a fleece-lined leather jacket around him, flouncing his long hair over the collar. His ease fills the periphery of his vision, giving him the oblique stare of a seer. Finding myself lost in that stare, I know he can generally read my mind like an open book. Would he know your number, like Mary Ann's ex, Ray, no matter where you moved or how many times you changed it? Hey, you want to go to an anti-war rally in Berkeley this afternoon? Jean-Claude asks as he strokes his mustache while I'm putting up his in-progress portrait on the drawing board. In the portrait, his eyes flash as wind catches his hair. Sketching soft lines, I start accenting the flowing strands, letting several come back across his face to accent the intensity of the gaze. Yeah, I guess, I reply, starting to darken shadows in the recesses of brow or eye sockets. In the blink of that eye, I catch myself flashing back, sitting right here that day, shortly after that week of debauchery with Joe. A tall, middle-aged woman sat down in the same chair where Jean-Claude sits now. I flash back. Jody needs your help, she said, straight out, looking at me, then away. I'm afraid she's been caught. Words trailed off as her face stiffened. Caught? I asked, studying her face. There, then, a heavy feeling of remorse began laying on my heart. I'm not sure the right word for it. All I know is where I dropped her off. She told me she needed to score. That was several days ago, and I haven't seen her since. You going politically on me? I asked, my attention drawn back in the present, staring at Jean-Claude. I thought you were an avowed non-believer in the dark arts. Hey, you remember Joe? I interject, studying Jean-Claude's eyes while drawing them. They feel as if lit with the memory of her. It seems to settle around us, that memory, as if her ghost suddenly joined us. My father naturally was in the party in China. until he became a refugee of its excesses. Then, as you know, I grew up in Paris, which is built on politics. I missed the riots there in 1968, so I thought I might catch up, he replied, then added, She coming around again? Hey, Guilo, thought you'd not gone from that harlot, he finished, using the term Guilo, a Chinese equivalent to the Spanish gringo, Hawaiian haole, or Blackstreet jive honky, which he used derogatorily or affectionately. The latter in this case, with me, I hoped. It seems I quit her, but she hasn't quit me. Her friend, the one who first gave me the address we went to, came by yesterday. Still drawing, I watched his eyes subtly widen out in a flashback. It was he who suggested we go to that address to find out exactly what happened to her. Me, as being very non-confrontational, I was then torn between checking it out or, well, pretending I'd never met her. Let her friend go to the police. When approaching Jean-Claude about it, he, without hesitation, started loading his 45. Then, remembering. Without further ado, we had caught a cab taking us to that address. Even from the outside, the three-story shabby Victorian looked plenty ominous to me. Jean-Claude straightaway laid a flat hand on the entire array of door buzzers. There was no response, but someone hurrying out allowed us to catch it open to hustle inside dimly lit corridors. After knocking on several doors, someone finally answered. When asked about Joe, they had merely signaled with an upward gaze before quickly slamming their door shut. Following Jean-Claude's lead, we mounted the stairs of the top floor where tracks seemed to lead to one door in particular. The light had dimmed as the stench of stale, unwashed bodies grew. Standing aside, he signaled me to knock. The door opened to the largest black man I'd ever seen. Yeah, what you want, honky? He said after staring coldly at me for a few seconds. Looking for Jody? I replied, noticing a young black girl with sparkly purple eyeliner standing behind the behemoth. He stared hard at me, then gave her a nod. She retreated into the gloom shadowing the room, returning seconds later with Joe, looking sallow and spent. Page 132. Even in the gloom, she seemed so dark as if shadowed in her own bleak aura. Suddenly, Jean-Claude sprang from his position out of sight, catching the behemoth in the knee with a flying kick. Crumpling to the floor with a groan, he swung a meaty paw, catching air as I grabbed Joe's hand, dragging her over top of him. Jean-Claude fired a couple rounds, booming from the 45, splintering the door frame as I pulled Joe down the hall to the stairs. Glancing back, I saw his hair flying as he rushed to join us. He let the 45 blast a couple more, then ample rounds as we made our way down and out. He let lead fly whenever a door might start to open along the way. The cab still waiting there on the street, we headed then back to my apartment. That was it then. Back now. What she have to say? Jean-Claude asked, now shifting in the chair. I'm thinking that little tart probably went right back to that drug house soon as she disappeared from your place the day after we pulled her out. His gaze turned to the foot traffic passing by. Still studying his face with my crayon, I got the distinct impression he was losing interest in the misadventures of another hopeless, self-destructing druggie. Her friend told me the police had found her body floating face down in the bay. You believe that? he asked, turning back to me with a frown. I sure don't want to. I'd much rather believe she went back home to Salt Lake City, married a decent guy, had a couple kids, settled down to live happily ever after, I replied, flashing back in my memory, seeing faint scars and needle tracks on her arms while doing one of the numerous erotic sketches that week of our torrid tryst. We had by then ingested or smoked a wide variety of drugs, from acid to opium during that time. Seeing the larger picture now, I felt that nausea of remorse settling in my gut. She was already on a fast, moving downward spiral, whether with you or somebody else, he offered, as if reading my thoughts. Jean-Claude was fluid like that, moving into or out of any situation, as if the world but an inseparable extension of himself. So, we go do our part to stop the war, he asked, brushing away hair blowing across his face. Plus, you no doubt got a babe to meet there, I offer, continuing to work the pastel. Plus, I got a woman to meet, he answers with a smile. How long does it take? Asked a tourist passing by in an I Heart San Francisco sweatshirt. Well, he's been working on mine for about 3 weeks, Jean-Claude pipes up with a sly grin. Looking over at the tourist, I saw a girl about 17 now with a drop-mouth stare going as she catches the flash of charm from Brother Child's gaze. He's Asian knowing, with French loving. What's your name, sugar? He asked. Cheryl, she replied shyly. You should get one done, darling. This guy's almost famous, Jean-Claude offered. One late night, early morning, coming off some coke, the secret of my infamous past had slipped out. Jean-Claude claimed hearing of me in France. As to that, I'm in doubt, but possibly at the height, the zenith of my career as a prodigy. By age 8, I was an international phenomenon, thanks to a Chicago syndicate of wealthy philanthropic publishers, captains of industry, and titans of commerce. To me then, they were just the boys. They stayed in the background of my rise, owning several Chicago newspapers along with numerous other enterprises. Chief among them, J.B. Stone, really believed me to be some kind of avatar for the age. He introduced me to some of the great Western philosophers of that time that he thought I might find enlightened. Those introductions gave me a lot of material to work with. As a youngster, I was inclined to mischief as being closer to that blissful levity freedom of childhood as opposed to the gravity of a serious adulthood. Playful then, I cruised on that free way of most anybody before partially or completely falling inward under the spell of sorrow, understanding the gravity weight of waiting on death as otherwise than why now, only knowing that inward spelling out of it, falling for it under that weight of waiting for it, waiting on who is it? Who is waiting now on whom, as if it's not you? It, that singular it, why, or you, yada iota, that at first, or at last, a person that I am is indivisible, invisible, it, why, or you, all along. All the adults I met at that time now, admittedly then all men, no matter how well educated, erudite, or sophisticated, had already fallen completely under that spell. In fact, their higher education, their higher standing in the academic community, only served to reinforce that spell. Page 134. That spell now, knowing inward out of its spelling in words, spelled a more rigorously conceived conceptual veil, covering that singular id y now as exiting, importing itself out in self-importance, duplicating itself as themselves only, as sword, slicing out of it a slice of life. Victims of their own self-importance, so obvious in the eyes of a child, all their pompous pretense seemed quite comical, quite laughable, as levity of a child predominates gravity of the adult, especially when they try to be intimidating. The body may be half grown, but the soul is always complete. Now, old J.B., a character that never took himself too seriously, really enjoyed seeing their pretentious bubbles so often popped. He would laugh uproariously at their sheer folly of trying so hard to outdo or undo themselves, tangled in the web of their own self-deceit. Now J.B.'s Chicago appetite for the meat of life marveled me time after time then. With his publications spreading the word worldwide, he really got my name out there. Along with that, he brought patronage to my art, which facilitated my realizing that dream of the circle I am, the Yam Academy. Even when the magic wore off, as I, too, fell under that ponderous weight, waiting on death, now knowing out of it a birth of that spell of self-importance, J.B., or B.J. as I came to think of him, as a friend dissociated from that burgeoning media empire, never deserted me until I deserted him. Going from child to boy to man, I lost interest in celebrity, wanting only a typical 1950s boyhood. Even B.J. wouldn't recognize me now. He also then introduced me to the Ab Brotherhood, a quasi-Judeo-Masonic network of philanthropic global elite oligarchs. B.J. once had me speak at a conference held at Chicago's McCormick Place to an audience of some 700. They didn't applaud, but had some interesting questions. That's when I got christened the Great Destroyer, half in jest, I'm sure. Some one of them told me later aside that my words of who, expressing why, for whatever reason it appears to disappear still as a singular it why now as ex idiom itself, bolstered, while at the same time shredded the web that they as Ab Brotherhood had built over many centuries out of a simple wish to be willing for it now not to realize itself as ourself out in time a while, a space in time, in memory as, I must confess, as confessions of evil, of her will, attention, intention, a stretch of it, his story, a stare eye, ask king of it, why are you, yada yada, that I am now, some acid being not of it, that as such that I am now knowing out of it, dissolving it even while, a while of it. Needless to say, they were and still are perfectly satisfied to find me lost now, out of it in obscurity. That I am as well. Okay, T. Cheryl here is going to sit for a portrait on my tab. I'll pick you up for the rally in an hour, Jean-Claude said, giving my shoulder a pat. Yeah, I just got to figure what hat I should wear. My commie beret or my red Republican ball cap. I suggest not wearing one. Better for you to be a neutral observer, he said. Yeah, why's that? Because you're one of those fanatical types. Take my word for it. I'll see you here in an hour, he said, walking off to check on his shop. Now, don't get the idea that Jean-Claude whiles away his time behind a shop counter. He has plenty comely young things for that. Make yourself comfortable, I told Cheryl, transferring Jean-Claude's ongoing portrait for a fresh blank sheet. Adjusting her pose, I went to work with a chisel-sharp and hard pastel crayon, affording the use of fine line or broad stroke. Cheryl had full, youthful lips that got a little pouty as the time passed. Watching my hand, following her eye on her, my thoughts turned back to him. No, Jean-Claude not a shopkeeper. That was really a cover. He liked it as an excuse to hire sweet young things to actually tend the shop while busy with his real job, working with Chinatown triads, smuggling China White, the purest heroin on the West Coast. It was really shady, with, I always felt somehow, the government involved. Thus I told Jean-Claude never, ever tell me anything more about his business beyond what he had already. After all, I'd done government-issued LSD with JFK. Look what happened to him. He surely would be appalled at the carnage that ended the violent 60s with the murder of his brother, followed by MLK, then the bloody Manson murders. Then again, I'm sure he knew well enough that's what lurked in the shadows of our national security state corporate military industrial complex. A beast of it soon to unleash a backlash of itself on us. Citizens, our country now flooded with AR-15s, whose only purpose to murder its own citizens. Women, children, aged, following its course after, almost but not quite, finishing its job in Vietnam. No human being, not even JFK, could stop that beast from breaking bad. Unleashed on itself, he told me he felt the war beast of it breathing down his neck, whispering in his ear that time was short for him. Something about him caught. Page 136. Caught between pacifists or hawks, racists or reformers, good or greed, the badness of business now, not standing a chance for peaceful coexistence. While he talked, we listened without really hearing or heeding the warning in his words. The mirage of it mirrored out in those words a tricky business, a cruel, deceitful, double-dealing, dirty business of mutually assured self-destruction, a bloody, cunning duplicity of itself, yet indivisible invisibility only appearing a while now or then, never made to last, so quickly disappearing, simply a singular disappearing of itself. Our other hood covering our eyes as ablack, instilling intent to reappear again of it. BJ told me that society at large, a manipulated manifestation of his society in particular, now, if ever not, ready for the message I had been called on to deliver. "How we doing?" I asked Cheryl. She shrugs with a half smile, continuing to stare past me at something, some thinking of her choosing as a reference to come back to, after inevitably looking around distracted by all the activity on the street, as I continued to work, concentrating chiefly around the eyes as So I had asked BJ about this web business as to my predestined destruction of it. What he told me stuck to this day. In fact, it was the beginning of the end of my prodigy phase. BJ told me we all, a wheel turning into or out of itself, serve the same waves as endings of it, as being complete, finding ourselves in time, thus even after a while now still it, forever our I, body being to wish for it or not liberated in its own liberation, a liberation as now thought deliberated, deliberately set up on a timeline now activated, as then the now accelerated by a primary followed by a secondary industrial revolution. An industry of the outgrowth of centuries of religious Protestant Reformation of Western European work ethic, now while only living to work or working to live, a mono I, her I life now while a money, low down life. In that life we all a wheel out in turning, yearning, burning, go for broke, breaking bad as the old paradigm of spirit, separated from matter, man with or without a womb from mind, or why are you or I as thoughts, separated from thinking, out in the or why, creator, separated from creation. That hour of destruction is being assured on that timeline could only be mitigated or modified by a simple individual, initiated inward by a voice, vowing it inward a solemn promise to be still it, while in motion of memory, yet wishing to be willing for it to realize itself in time while a while of it. That individual, the only one directly aware of that awareness of consciousness as at lack.com, as being conned by a simple singular twist of fate now, to be a while as thought not out of it, knowing, denying itself, taking just us from it as being captive, out of it in captivity, of a potent or impotent primary wish to be, as thought being conned by itself alone, imported as our own importance, of a duplicity in time, a while of days, decades, centuries, millennium, etc., felt falling, falling, falling under the spell, spelled out of it in a phonographic alphabeto, a spell of it spelling out his and her empire built on it, perpetuates it in the word now then as means of its captivity, also means of its liberation. But for now, that wish, wishing it not, but only as will turn to wish to be willing for it to realize itself, are now not. The catch-22, as being our current system built on cheap, non-renewable energy, is itself running out a ticking time bomb, while population shifts to a secondary man, his mind or why memory of itself as though as thought to be information, still primarily indivisible invisibility, the timeline of its wish to be willing to find itself thus, is it reaching a critical mass of evil possibilities. As BJ told of it, I felt that feeling of youthful levity turn under the pressure of the gravity of our situation out in time as a while, appearing disappearing into a certain desperation to escape my calling, till finally answering it just us before it's too late. In that I am at last the first to realize it, till the first realize it at last. Is it going to take much longer? I've got to meet a friend. Cheryl asked, beginning to shift anxiously in the chair. Give me just a couple more minutes, I reply with a smile. The fog still in, with the crowd still thin. I wanted to milk it a bit longer. The portrait is finally getting to the point where I might catch another client. Then, remembering Jean-Claude, I finish it, wrapping it up in a cardboard folder stamped with my monogram. It's a good gig that I feel pleased with the quality of the work. As my proficiency increases, I can make $400 or $500 on a decent day. That's equivalent to several $1,000s today. Keeping hours of my choosing, affording a cool pad in the marina with time for windsurfing in Marin, I felt truly exhilarated till news of Joe's body being fished out of the bay put a serious damper on my spirits. Suddenly, two ghosts haunted my mind. How much for a portrait? A passerby inquires, stopping to inspect my self-portrait sample. Now, I love the blues, but that question's real music to my ears. Jean-Claude pulls up at 12:30 in his two-seater Mercedes coupe, kicking down the easel, folding up the chairs. I go to jump in, smoking a fresh Marlboro cigarette. Not with this cigarro, he says. Page 138. But I just lit it. I'll roll down the window, I reply. Forget it. Put it out. All right. Just keep it outside. You're a heroin dealer and you're concerned with the Marlboro cigarette, I chide, sliding into the low-slung foreign job. Jean-Claude gives me the cold Chinese stony silence for mentioning the H word. Thoroughly chastised, I answer with a silence of my own, our own it as being in time now still aware of free awareness to be conscious of captivity in it a while. He's the straightest, soberest dude I've ever met. He, more of a monk than some monks I met, continues on in that way as I let wind blast through the open window, hoping to break the impasse, knowing he could embrace that silence within, out for the rest of the afternoon. It envelops just us. Atmas, atmosphere, pervasive, it pervades us, as surrounding a black around itself is as everybody wishing to be a willing of it. Why, still only now, whoever knows out of it a wish to be otherwise, realized or not now knowing out of it in Sanskrit as Karana Sharira, a karmic cause and effect, cosmic memory, intelligence, consciousness, cause, all ka, now as ka knowing out of it, a causality of, or you or I perceiving ab lack of it now out in still, it instilled by itself, or my memory self instilling intent of it to be as thought again of it out in anybody, out in, out in, out in a hurrah, a singular it, why now, anybody still as itself as a being indivisible, invisibility to wish itself in war as though two beings, willingly twisting as twin, appearing, staring it, or appearing out of itself, inward as if eyes, nose, lips, ears, etc., as though as thought out in, formas, being anybody, desiring and blackness not to be a gain, as cause of it, y'all, gain. That's it. All of it, why? As a wish to be willing itself to be a body now. is a body for it to wish to beg in the first place. Still ask king of it why. It why, that's all there is to here, to it, of it, for it, by it, in it, out of it, a body of it. Now why? To be wishing for it being of everybody consciousness, as though not first of all a singular it. Why, it's a body still motionless, more pervasive, completely pervading it as of all, first a person. You, universal, you, you too, from, by, for, of, on, off, in, out, it, all this, the time of it, a while. Asian, American, black, white, brown, yellow, blue, etc., singular, why, you now, as X, itting as X, y'all, sexual, duplicating itself time after time, not or then, in word, thoughts of it, anybody, for y'all, of it, why, it's meant to be a mean, inferior medium, meant to be all of it, you, as being, beaming, consciousness, consciously now, you to be, knowing out of it, a me, mean, inferior, artificial memory, identity, conned as being by its own desire into it, ab ein con, she, us, of ibre, body, believing, a belief of it, believing themselves to be it by itself, wishing to be willing itself, as now, as though, as thought not itself. Ha, 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 the joke's in you, being still you. The entire visible universe with its zillions of stars, galaxies, a plan it's in light years ahead of its time, all you, a while of it emitted, admittedly to be reabsorbed in that blink of a black eye into it as being itself, disappearing itself out in the dark of the covenant, that agreement that I am to be a goad of God as thought. It's still motionless, more pervasive, silent invisibility, eternal eye, turning all body. A real it, why, with a cause, a wish, a desire to be willing, it, ablack, now a gain of it, merely potent potential, virtual, virgin out of it, in for mas, pos, abilities, in that it's why we awake, being with all the causality of youthful folly. We may say, I slept, as though that I am, as thought, nothing more or less than a collection of stinking cells, sold on the mere idea of you, rather than you buying into the fact everybody is its causal planeting potential, potentially duplicating itself, a being, between appearing, disappearing a while now, its duplication situation of creation, our first time body, a singular it, why, body of creation as X, itting, potentially, a dopey dupe, potential duplication of itself, our body of time now, space for the first time, realizing itself as one body of it, why, first, a person still unborn in the first place of a common Mari ground, for y'all humanity, for the gods, the stars, the planets, only potentially appearing now, then disappearing y'all out in the blink of AI, of a now, why I itself, a beholder of its beholding itself, merely appearing, staring, starring it, our ancestors of that, our prior I in memory of the Almighty to y'all, the miserable of it, why you or I are always present in the past, here, now, there, to reabsorb it ourselves as any bag of woe of it. Thus it all appears, appearing still as singular, it why now as exiting after a while, here then there disappears, disappearing. Awareness of it thus is much keener in the Asian as I any blood. With Jean-Claude, the absorbing energy so heavy that I've never seen anyone mess with him. It's heavy like the business he's in, dealing with a product so addictive, people are just either drawn to it, to him, or just quickly move on by. Never asking for it or about it, I'm thankful to never have introduced anyone, especially someone like Joe, to it. Sometimes I can feel the grave around old Jean-Claude, but he is now or ever not sullen or gloomy, just potentially silent as the grave. But then I match that silence till we both merge, only to re-emerge after a while now, still indivisible, invisibility of it. You do any business, T, after I left you with Cheryl? He asked, finally breaking the silence as we roll up the Embarcadero Freeway to the Bay Bridge. Rolling along, we pass through the curtain of fog to blue skies. Generally, I follow my trend from Los Angeles of only going west. Fisherman's Wharf alongside my pad and marina, my easternmost boundaries. Page 140. This be my only second trip east across the Bay Bridge, although I'm really digging seeing it through its steel struts whizzing by. You know, the offer to come work for me still stands. You could make some real money, he offered, brushing back hair with his fingers. Thanks, man, I do appreciate all you done for me, but I'm happy doing what I'm doing, I replied, rolling up the car window. Ah, that's why you drink so much whiskey, he asked, downshifting with the flow of traffic. I'm Irish. It's part of our tradition. Like opium to your Chinese, I managed to say without a trace of irony. Having no judgment about Jean-Claude's business, I know I'm now not meant to deal in it, only play within it. Whiskey my only weakness till I got around Mother O one time. She took me down, spanking my butt bad, but somehow I managed to walk away from her, still in her eye. For me, whiskey don't mix with opium, though now, looking back, I'm sure you're better off without either. Then I numbed the pain better on whiskey. Jean-Claude turns to give me a hard look. He knows well enough the history of addiction in China. He also knows opium has been flowing into this country as long as whiskey. The only break in the heroin trade in recent history was World War II. Vietnam, on the other hand. So, we going to protest the war or keep some chickadee happy, I ask, as we leave the bridge heading for Telegraph Avenue, taking us to the UC campus in Berkeley. The war. You know I hate war, but this one has been very profitable, he says, as he wheels the Mercedes exiting the freeway. Now it's my turn to give him the look. JFK's worst nightmare. The bloodshed of our native sons, over 50,000 killed while still counting, loomed over all of us so safe on the home front. JFK lost his big brother in World War II. He knew war up close and personal. Its horror, its blood, its mangled bodies with mangled lives. He knew well enough the French had already lost this war in 1954. We could only lose it again. JFK knew this, but at the same time, seduced and deluded by the power of that military-industrial machine, he succumbed to begin unleashing it. The air war was already years underway by the time I went to Washington in '63 to meet with JFK. American pilots already dying over there, forewarned of the slaughter of innocents to come. Supposedly there as trainers, mere bystanders, advising locals to put their skin in the game. They found out for themselves in it already our war. Even then in 1963, 2 years before the first U.S. Marines waded ashore at Da Nang, JFK heard death knocking on the door of the white people's house. We parked to walk with others streaming towards Telegraph Avenue. In the distance, I heard a voice shouting through a megaphone, "No more war! No more war!" Suddenly feeling the whiskey wearing off, with the berserkly effect setting in, I felt lightheaded. Little did I know then how heavy it would get once again, about to go from the frying pan to the fire in just a few short blocks. "I've got to meet Marlena at 1:15, Jean-Claude says, pointing to a watch that probably costs more than my apartment building. We can see crowds ahead, filling the sidewalks, jostling together, spilling out into the street. A block away, a thin blue line of cops with riot helmets holding batons block access to the campus gate. About halfway between, a skinny, long-haired, bearded fool standing on a box speaks zealously through a megaphone. The war has gone on way too long. It's by now an endless, gruesome killing field, as much a race war where disproportionate amount of black or yellow men die, sometimes 10 times 10 to one white boy. That's always been the minimal ratio of Anglo to non-Anglo in America's typical population demographic. As Irish American, I pass for average white boy. Now, letting my long hair freak flag fly, I join the rest, people, black, brown, or yellow, fringing conventional WASP America. WASPs, my people, as well as even Republicans. Looking around, I recognize a few cops on the Berkeley force from a week once spent drawing here at a street festival. The helmeted guardsmen backing them, my brothers as well. Can't help feeling patriotic, still hating that fucking war. T, there she is, the Rubia, the redhead, Jean-Claude said, tugging on my shoulder. Then, dashing off, he started knifing through the crowd. Tagging right along, my eyes darted about the faces, grim or grinning. At first it seemed almost social enough, but I knew the tactics of the FBI, how they used agent provocateurs to start a fire where there was none, fanning it along with slogans like, "Kill the pigs." Having seen it all go down in Chicago in 1968 at the Democratic Convention, I anticipated a riot in the making. JFK's murder signaled the end of any chance for peaceful coexistence, while at the same time, LSD and Eastern religion ushered in an awakening to a new paradigm of reality, as now interrelatedness of all in all. Page 142. Bam! A brick hits the side of a car. At first, I almost laugh at such a petty act, but then a fight breaks out. The thin blue line starts wading into the crowd, pushing people back, even as they surge forward. People now running, scatter in all directions as tear gas canisters pop out, sending noxious smoking trails as they hit pavement. A rider wearing a gas mask tosses one back. Briefly catching sight of Jean-Claude, his redhead in tow, carrying a "Fuck the War" placard on a wooden stick, I retreat to the nearest exit. More cops in blue with guardsmen in green are moving up to reinforce those already punishing the surging crowd with their batons. As bricks keep flying out, I hear the sound of glass breaking over a frenzy of crowd noise, some of it in full retreat from baton-wielding cops. Turning back, I look for Jean-Claude now, lost in the mayhem. Then briefly I catch sight of him handing the redhead the sign as he heaves a brick through a plate glass window. At that point I duck into a storefront entryway to avoid the crush of onrushing bodies. Another body, a short little gal with long silky black hair, ducks in right behind me. Her momentum causes our bodies to crash, full breast crushing into my chest. Pushing off, I find myself staring into her eyes, meeting a set of wide dark pools. For a long second our eyes lock. Then, like a magnet, our lips meet. In the background, screams and curses break the spell. Suddenly then a blue helmet appears. "Get out of there! Clear the area!" he barks. We don't have to be told twice. Grabbing hands, we bolt on down the street, forgetting about Jean-Claude. In fact, before completely coming to my senses, I have most of her clothes off shortly after getting breathless to her place. By the time I got her name, Delilah, we had coupled. There was just something so invigorating about a street riot. It really gets the adrenaline pumping, making me horny as hell. With hardly a word between us, we made love until dark before venturing back out. By now, the neighborhood seemed pretty quiet. Here, at least 6 blocks from Telegraph Avenue, except for the wail of sirens fading in the distance, all seemed calm. We walked several blocks to a corner bar, the jukebox playing, for what it's worth, an anti-war song belied a clientele more preoccupied with Jack Daniels than Vietnam. Finding a table, we ordered a couple of drinks, still feeling breathless from the lovemaking. It all seemed somehow so righteous, reaffirming the saying, "Make love, not war." Delilah covered my hand with one of hers as she lit a cigarette with the other. We smoked, drank, held hands while gazing into each other's eyes, hardly uttering a word. Half expecting to see Jean-Claude burst in with a wild eye with a bomb in one hand, the redhead in the other, I scanned the room. So out of character, I thought, to see him running amok in an anti-war riot. One for the book. We ordered another round as Delilah took a fistful of quarters over to the jukebox. Studying her profile in the garish lights coming off the music box, I sipped my whiskey. Her nose and eyes said Italian, but the mouth seemed more Irish. A song brought 2 ghosts out of the periphery of my mind, whispering in my ear to get down the road before that tinderbox ignited again. If only listening, but why? So for whatever reason, only who knows, I stayed. Still recalling that warning the moment I slipped off her panties to gaze at her full pubic bush, alarms went off in my head. Then, like so many occasions previous, I plunged on ahead. It would be 4 years until we would finally part for good, for better or worse. What can I say now, looking back? It's all a dream. She turned out to be a great cook, an artist with food as well as fabric. Beautiful, she bounded with an infectious enthusiasm that could turn at the drop of a pin into a fiery temper. Somehow she sensed my calling to a spiritual purpose, although I didn't reveal my past until we were forced by a storm to hole up in a seedy hotel in Cloudganj, India, nearly 3 years later. Ironically or not, our relationship also led to a degree of drug-induced sexual debauchery. Yet, we didn't live together, only seeing each other occasionally for the first 2.5 months, till we embarked on a journey to the east. But then, I get ahead of myself now, looking behind.